May 8th, 1945. Germany had officially surrendered. The war in Europe was declared over, yet a true peace had not yet settled upon the land. In a desolate field near the banks of the Elbe River, a column of utterly exhausted women trudged through the fading twilight. Their gray uniforms hung loosely on skeletal frames, their boots weighted down by thick mud. Among them was Leisel Vagner, 24 years old, formerly a communications aide in the German army. She had not slept in 2 days. None of them had. Suddenly, as an American convoy crested the ridge, the women froze in their tracks. Olive-drab trucks, emblazoned with the white star of the Allied forces, ground to a halt just ahead. The crunch of boots on gravel cut through the silence, followed by orders shouted in English. Hearts pounded and chests tight with fear. They had all heard the terrifying rumors that captured Germans, particularly women, would face execution, humiliation, or atrocities far worse. Some whispered frantic prayers, while others clutched each other's hands, trembling in the damp air. An American sergeant stepped forward from the convoy. His rifle hung loosely at his side, deliberately unraised. Speaking through an interpreter, he addressed the terrified group. "You are prisoners of war," the translation came. "You will be processed, and you will be fed." The words barely registered at first. The women were corralled toward a small clearing, a makeshift camp ringed by barbed wire, yet populated with canvas tents rather than prison cells. Nearby, a field kitchen hissed and steamed, sending smoke curling into the evening sky. Then, the smell hit them with the force of a physical blow. Cooked food! Real food! Leisel stared in disbelief as American soldiers began ladling stew into metal tins, thick, hot, and steaming. It was the kind of meal none of them had laid eyes on in months. One by one, the women stepped forward, their hesitation betraying their fear of a cruel trick. Some refused to take the tins, convinced the contents were poisoned. But then, one of the prisoners, the youngest among them, barely 18, took a cautious, trembling sip. Her eyes immediately welled with tears. "It's meat," she whispered, her voice breaking. The Americans spoke little. They simply handed out food, water, and wool blankets with routine efficiency. There was no shouting, no retribution. Some of the soldiers even averted their gaze, seeming embarrassed by the emaciated condition of the women standing before them. When Leisel finally accepted her portion, her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the tin. The stew was warm, dense with potatoes and carrots, and possessed something she had not experienced in an eternity: flavor. It was more than just sustenance. It was an act of mercy. All around her, women sat in the grass, eating in silence, tears streaming down their faces. There were no guards beating them, no threats issued, no harsh orders barking commands. There was only the sound of spoons scraping against tin bowls and the occasional soft murmur of English spoken by the troops. Leisel looked up at the soldier who had served her, a young man with mud caked on his boots and a look of kindness in his eyes. She managed to whisper a single word: "Why?" He looked at her for a moment, pausing before he shrugged. "Because you're human," he replied simply. For Leisel, it was the first time in years she had heard anyone use that word as if it carried weight. That night, as the camp fell silent, the women lay awake under borrowed blankets, their stomachs full for the first time in months. They could hear laughter drifting from the American tents, not mocking or cruel, but normal, human laughter. Leisel closed her eyes and thought, "We thought they would kill us, but they fed us dinner instead." She knew she would never forget this night, for amidst the wreckage of war, she felt something strange and forgotten: safety. But peace, always brings new questions. And what followed would test everything they thought they knew about their enemy and themselves. The second morning arrived soft and quiet, with sunlight filtering through the fog and dew glistening on the barbed wire perimeter. A truck rumbled to life somewhere beyond the tents, and the rich scent of coffee and wood smoke rolled through the camp. Leisel sat up, still wrapped in the rough wool blanket the Americans had provided. For a few disoriented seconds, she forgot where she was. Then, she saw the guards. Their rifles were slung casually over their shoulders as they talked and laughed among themselves. It was not the cruel laughter she had grown accustomed to, but something merely human. Beside her, Clara, another young prisoner of war, whispered in awe, "They're smiling." It sounded as if she were describing a miracle. The women were gathered near a wooden table where an American corporal was processing the group. Each woman received a small card stamped POW and a ration token. There was no shouting, no insults, and no physical abuse, just names being written carefully in English script. When Leisel's turn came, the corporal looked up briefly and offered a small smile. "Leisel Vagner," he said, making a genuine effort to pronounce the German name correctly. She nodded, too afraid to speak. He wrote it down slowly, as if her name mattered. Behind him, two cooks were stirring breakfast in a massive pot-hot oatmeal, mixed with sugar and dried fruit, luxuries that had not existed in Germany for months. One of the women began to weep simply from the aroma. As the women ate, the camp doctor made his rounds. He was an older man wearing a white armband, carrying a stethoscope and a clipboard. He spoke softly, his accent thick with the cadence of New York. He checked for fever, wounds, and frostbite. He did not care about their uniforms, their ranks, or the colors of the flags they had served. He only cared that they were alive. Later that afternoon, a jeep pulled up to the perimeter. Two Red Cross nurses stepped out, American women dressed in crisp khaki skirts and caps. They carried supplies, bandages, soap, and a crate of clean clothes. The German women stared at them, frozen in disbelief, witnessing the arrival of a humanity they had been told did not exist.